Hello, and welcome to Journey Through the Eyes, the EMDR podcast that is here to unveil and explore the transformative power of EMDR therapy. I am one of your hosts. My name is Tamara J. Brown. I'm a licensed professional counselor with the RISE Psychotherapy and Coaching Services, PLLC, here in the state of Texas. And I have with me my phenomenal co host, Miss, I want her to say her name.
Happy Couch.
And we are on an amazing mission to support clinicians with those critical, human, and amazing, authentic conversations so that we can share resources about EMDR therapy and building your amazing private practice. And so, again, I'm Tamara J. Brown, one of your co hosts, and I want to give my special friend, okay, Kathy Couch, just some room to share and welcome you all.
Hi, Tamara. How are you, girl? It's so
I'm
good to
well.
see you. These are always such exciting times when we have these. I'll look at my schedule and I'll be like, what am I doing today? And I'll see this and I'll just light up. It's just been so fun to do these with you. And we have so much juicy stuff to talk about. And
We
the launch of this
do.
podcast has been amazing. And it's so amazing to share with someone. You know, a lot of times as solo practitioners, we're in our offices in our own space. And that connection has really been more important for me. So
Yeah.
I'm happy we decided to do this.
I am too, friend, and I thank you, right? Because it really serves that purpose that we don't have to do the journey alone. And I'm grateful. And I hope that our listening audience, because when they come in, we never know what juicy stuff we're going to get, right?
Yeah,
But you
yeah,
gave us a juicy something already, which is we don't have to do the journey alone and reaching out and for connections and just exploring, right? And being willing to do the experience, but not doing it alone. So I thank you,
you
okay, for
do.
allowing me. Mhm, mhm. And so, friend, I'm so excited because our amazing conversation today is drum roll please, right? The beautiful, beautiful therapy model of EMDR. We're going to talk about it. So that is our juicy conversation today. EMDR, Kathy, what is it and how does it work?
I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about just your training journey and my training journey. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want therapists to have a decent journey from training to being certified to being a consultant, really being empowered with those skills. So I'll just kind of start out for myself, kind of how I came into EMDR and when I learned what it was, what made me so committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
So my history is I graduated from the University of Michigan in 2006, and I was a social policy uh, major. So it was research and social policy. So I thought I'm never going to do interpersonal practice. I was a roommate with a person that was in child and family. She did all her interviews on me right while I'm over here crunching the numbers. And so I came back to Idaho and it was like, there's no jobs. So
Wow.
my first job was being a swimming instructor at the YMCA with the, elderly uh, group in the morning doing their yoga exercises in the water, at 7 in the morning. And that was my first job as a therapist and social worker. And then I got a job part-time at our local hospital, a psychiatric hospital in the adolescent unit, which has since shut down. And then I began sort of my journey into trauma, and this is going to lead us into why I think EMDR is so important in my experience because I was a caseworker working with children and families, and through that experience, I had legal interfaces, relationships that still serve me to this day with attorneys, judges, therapists, families, service providers, and I just saw all this trauma and they would do their treatment plan and the parents would get them back, but I couldn't necessarily say this person has changed or this family has changed or this child has changed. And when I was considering moving, I couldn't go anywhere in child welfare. I couldn't get promoted. There was kind of a glass ceiling there. So I decided to change and I went into the substance abuse field where I began working on my clinical license. And in my clinical license, I began working at a substance abuse agency that managed a program, and I began to manage it. And we had a trauma informed curriculum. And I just felt like people were leaving the groups that we had with their brains open. Does that make sense? Have you seen that where you just felt like the intervention was just
Mhm.
not soaking in, right?
Mhm, mhm,
I thought
mhm,
there has to be a better way. And so
mhm.
when I left that and went to the hospital, I had heard of EMDR, but I didn't necessarily. So I had my daughter, and I thought I need some more stability. So I left billable hour and I went to a hospital, which is a nonprofit. And then I was like, there has to be a better way to heal trauma. And I'd heard of EMDR, and there was a training. I was trained by HAP. They had a grant coming out here to Twin Falls, Idaho. And they trained a bunch of therapists, but then nobody ever really saw the solution like I did, right? I felt people change. I began using it, interventions that I had tried for a really long time. This surpassed them all. And so that's how I became committed to using EMDR. And then I had my twins in 2020 and the pandemic. And so I wasn't able to use it as much as I would have liked. And then when I came back and started my own private practice, I began sort of realizing the power, right? So that's kind of my journey. To be able to understand how people can really change if we have those intensives, being able to commit to them intensive time and saying, I can heal 60 years of trauma in 6 hours with some patients. That's
Wow,
happened. And so that
wow.
was sort of my reason why.
Mhm.
What about you? What about your kind of experience getting trained and that story for you?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, I can't just skate through that because she said lots of beautiful things. And what it gave us a glimpse of is what it really kind of looks like our own journey into EMDR for every clinician is going to be different. But we get to see those different aspects of what it looks like in real time, in real life, right? Where how you shared your mom. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? You're working these different jobs and then you're trying these different things because I think along the journey, right? There's a certain expectation, right? That now that I am out of grad school, now that I do have all this professional stuff, I got to find my lane and I got to make sure I show up for my clients. But while I'm doing that, I'm doing life too. You know what I mean? So all those types of things until we land, right? And find our thing. But mine is a little similar. Oh, well, no, it's not. I ended up I was working already. I was started working at a call center
Uh-huh.
and I hated it. I stumbled
Uh-huh.
into therapy, literally. I had no idea what I wanted to go to school for. All I know, I was going to school, and all I could remember, really, okay, was that in school in the small town of Lockhart that I grew up in, all I remember the old school IBM computers, and
Yeah.
they would say that knowledge is key, go to college, and that little slogan and all
Uh-huh.
that, okay, from the Nancy Reagan's program. And
Yeah.
all I had was that reference point, really, to say you need to go to college. All
So
right. And I was
powerful.
in
There's
my
something wrong
30s.
with that. Yeah.
I was in my 30s when I first decided to go to college. I didn't know what for because people in my community, those were not the kind of conversations we were having. Right. But I did go and I did get my bachelor's. And then I tried to get out here in this world with a bachelor's in psychology and find a job and found out that okay. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Now, mind you, at this time, I am a struggling single mom,
Mm,
okay, with two sons
mm,
and living off of welfare and
mm.
trying to manage life and then get to, in my little mind, I'm thinking I'm about to make a lot of money with this bachelor's of psychology and then find out. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now what do I do?
Mm,
What do I do now? Okay. So then I ended up sitting in my car, wrestling with where am I going to go take care of these little kids. And I was in front of a Marshall's department store, which is a clothing store here in Texas. And then that's when the little cell phones had just came out. And I had an email or something, you know how they send you those ads to your email and it
uh-huh.
said counseling degree. I said, whoa, I'll do that. So I did the whole master's program, but flew through, so college and that whole experience is its own kind of
Yeah,
overwhelm,
for sure.
right? For many of us. I know it was for me, but I was able to get a job at a facility that was doing recovery for people, for men who were coming out of prison with the criminal justice system. So I was able to find my way into the therapy
Yeah.
path as an LCDC, or a licensed chemical dependency counselor here in the state of Texas. That may be something else in some other area, but here we call it an LCDC. And so I was doing that, and I started noticing
Uh-huh.
I had, excuse me, I had a watered down version of
Yeah.
CBT that was still very powerful and helpful, right? And it was helping clients, but it was only helping to a degree. And I was like, what is that?
That's where I was too. It was very puzzling. Like, these are the
Yeah.
interventions, these are all evidence-based. I learned the curriculum, I did the things, and I thought, well,
But
maybe there are outcomes there, but I can't say for sure.
I was like, well, you did great doing that kind of evaluation and assessment or taking stock. I
Yeah.
turned that whole thing on. I was like, I'm a horrible therapist because they're not getting better. And so, and
Oh,
then
you
being able,
internalized it.
I totally internalized it. Okay. Because I was like, I knew, much like you, right, in looking at the self talk here, okay, on the journey.
Yeah.
Because much like you, I was, assessing and I was evaluating,
Right.
looking and trying to gauge the progress, much like you. But my self work and that self talk, boy, I was like, I internalized it. And I was like, now I know I'm steady, I know. And then I ended up, and now this is my journey. And I'm just being transparent. I was working at an agency, and I asked because I heard the word EMDR floating around at the agency. And at this time, this agency was serving people who were homeless and with substance use. And when you got those co occurring disorders and
Yeah.
you're trying to treat it, it's like, whoa. And I'm
And
like,
you're a new therapist too, right?
yeah, and then you're a new
Right.
therapist. And so I asked my supervisor at the time, I heard somebody talk. I said, what is EMDR? She said, oh, it's too expensive for you. Just continue doing what she had. And I caught on to that. Right. And I was like, too expensive for me? Is it my salary? What is it? And so I had, coming into this, I had the idea like I wasn't included, right? But it was my journey into private practice and me meeting another clinician. And I had to dig, folks. I had to dig, Kathy, the courage to ask the private practice owner I was working for if she knew about EMDR because I saw it on the website. And she was the one that helped me to get there. And I got my training through the EMDR Institute. And boy, oh boy. And she told me, she said, now I know you're smart and I know you're brilliant, but
Uh-huh.
EMDR is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Just go with it. Take care of yourself. Don't come back to work for 2 days. And then let's talk about it.
I never had any of that. I wrote a letter to the hospital I was working at saying, can I
Wow.
get some funding for this training? That, because they were like, it's expensive. And then my supervisor called and said, here, hop on this training. We got a grant. But I thought it was just another modality, that it was just, another training. I had no idea about the self-care, about the intensity, that I would be a practicum student during the training. I had no idea about that. And it was just different. It was just, I didn't have those people to process it with. Luckily I had a group of peers where we were all trained together. There was 3 of us. And I also worked with parolees in aftercare. That was a curriculum that I was training from, was a parolee aftercare curriculum. And it was just like, if I could get these parolees to get to some of the thinking, I can do the criminal thinking, I can do the level of severity, the LSI, recidivism, but what is really going to make them stop and process through the trauma? It's not going to be, thought stoppers and defense mechanisms.
Yeah. And I remember when my LPC supervisor said to me in one of our meetings, And I want to offer this to our audience, right? The first thing she said to me, she said, on your journey, I want to encourage you to lean into your identity as a therapist and really go through the different models to see which one resonates with you the
Yes.
most and with what you see yourself doing. And at the time, because I'm fresh out of college and, we go through that rigorous training, I couldn't process and digest what she was saying. But since going through the EMDR training, right, and then doing EMDR, um, I've learned to take care of myself and slow down and lean in. And now, even though my choice of therapy model is EMDR, right? Um, I have an appreciation and a new understanding
Yeah.
of all the other ones,
Yeah.
right? And understanding how EMDR is braided in with all of it's a
Right.
beautiful blend,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And so we get to wield that and offer that to amazing human beings who have been through some really tough and very hard and painful things to really get them happy results.
Results. And I think as you're saying this, Tamira, it's like for the listeners, this is a change therapy process. So, people have different episodes of talk therapy or different clinical interventions. This is change therapy. And so that's why I'm so committed to it, is because you can really change and shift those chronic core beliefs. And if you're thinking about this as a therapist, and you're new and you're considering, doing EMDR, think about your clinical framework. What resonates with you? Do I like trauma? Do I like skills and supporting them? Sometimes you might not even know, some you may know, but I think that's a really important clinical question if you're supervising others to do what she did for you, don't you?
I do, because when we talk about what is EMDR, and there's lots of stuff. We can do Dr. Google and Professor YouTube. There's lots of opinions about EMDR. And as a therapist, and we kind of piggybacking on last week, we talked about our deservability when we're moving into private practice, right? And that we as therapists, we have, well, I'm going to encourage, because I know I don't want to come across like as if I'm demanding we do
Exactly.
something, because we always have a choice. But this is me inviting us to step into that choice point to really recognize and get clear about that. I can only imagine, because I know I've been in a space where I'm pursuing the success, and there was nothing wrong with that, because I am very passionate about helping people, right? But I didn't realize that passion can become a flame and an ember, right? That I don't have to keep igniting and igniting if
Yeah.
I can get the clarity about which of these evidence-based therapy modalities resonates with who I am and how I am envisioning in the impact I want to bring to the table in my corner of the universe, if you will. And with that being said, when I found out that our clients can come to an EMDR session
Yeah.
and experience transformation in that session and leave out differently, oh man, my heart
Yeah.
leaped,
Yeah.
right?
Like as
Because,
a
yeah.
healer, you've talked about yourself as a healer.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm a healer. When you see that healing right before you, and I don't think I even got it before I even went to basic training, even after I was basic trained. I don't think I even got it until I really began to apply it and work with people and to get good at it and stay committed. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I would be like, oh, I know what to do here, and you would see people change and become resilient and drop the bag of rocks. It's like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing, and I'm glad, I'm hoping and I'm suspecting we're probably going to have a two-part series to this, which I believe as we're navigating through this, I think it's beautiful. And the reason I say that in a two-part series with this is because what is unfolding right before our eyes is inviting especially the new, and sometimes even the seasoned therapists who have been at this, because I've seen seasoned therapists who've been in this longer than I, but they're not happy.
Yeah.
And this is an invitation on helping us and pointing you in the direction for our listeners on how you can begin to access that happiness, because it all begins with you as a therapist. And I know the world and the society, no matter what field, what side of the universe we're coming from, at the end of the day, we're not always being taught to pay attention to what you're doing and noticing, does this feel in alignment with who you are, with
Yeah.
what you believe, and
Yes.
who you are and what you're here to do in this world. But we get to do that. That is what makes this space for me sacred and so powerful, because even though it can for some people, if there are some folks who are like me, I'm gonna put it out here. I am, and I've said it before, the way that my brain is wired, I don't like all the nitty gritty details. At first, I didn't see the value.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Yeah.
And now, because EMDR, it teaches you to be graceful
Yes.
with yourself, because it is a huge learning curve.
Oh yeah.
But I had to, I had to just stop
Uh-huh.
and get that clarity and say, hold on, why
Yep.
isn't it that you don't like that nitty gritty tedious? Why does that look tedious if
Uh-huh.
it's beneficial? And it's because it made me think,
Oh, okay.
right? And if we've ever heard that when we're on autopilot, we travel the thought path of least thinking because it's easier. But when you have to put intentional thought, critical thought into what you're doing, it can feel like, because now you're really intentionally present and you've got a process. And when we're not used to, like me, I wasn't used to doing that.
And the structure process, right? What I wanted to go back to and just put in the business point, because I'm all business,
Of course.
is getting into that intention part that you were saying. People have said, I don't know what stepping back and saying, I don't know what my mission is. I don't know what my private practice would be. Go back to that moment when you sit, you find out who you are. What's my mission? My mission is to heal people in an accelerated way to relieve grief and trauma. That's my mission. Did I come up with that this week? No. It's taken a long time and it may shift, but the beautiful thing about having that intention therapeutically for a modality and the business component is that somebody will come to you and say, hey, I have this new great idea for a treatment for cancer, and their families. And if that's not in line with that intention, you can gracefully say, that's not in line with my mission, because we all want to save and help and do all the things, right? That's going to help you take care of yourself. That mission statement is your self-care tool.
And I'm so glad that you and I have decided to be humans. Okay, and to have such an organic process to really offer ourselves and the listening audience real help. And that self-care piece, because again, when we go back to, you know, building the business and getting that clarity and taking that time with yourself, because the business is, if we do get on a path of building a business and providing amazing EMDR therapy through our private practice, then what we really need to know, and this can be a juicy conversation later, is that the life and the growth of our business is really a reflection of ourselves and our self-care. The business is an extension, right? And a mirror of all that. And so we can get these little pieces and drop it and say, this self-care and taking that time to do the work and give yourself permission. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's that surrender space too, right? And EMDR, when you do the training, it will position you to surrender what you thought you knew. Okay. Okay. So let's give some deets. Okay. Let's start with that, especially for this segment, right? And let's talk about what is EMDR, Kathy? What is it really? Or, yeah, or what's the clinical way, right? That
Like
we could
kind of
go
like
into.
how I describe it is in therapy, you have goals. In EMDR, you have goals, of symptom reduction based on memories. That's the basis of it, right? So it's really the theory of EMDR was developed by Francine Shapiro, where she figured out a link between eye movements between the left and right sides of the brain, resolved memories and distress. And the whole point of this is to reduce suffering. And so she developed an 8-phase process with the bilateral stimulation to help access that information in our brain, which she calls the adaptive information processing model. So the whole component is that you have information that's maladaptively processed. So if a patient comes to you with panic attacks or anxiety, as in therapy, I would have treated the symptoms of, deep breathing, stress reduction. In EMDR, we work with the whole body and the whole nervous system, from the polyvagal theory to their window of tolerance, to be able to decrease their arousal while activating a distressing memory to reduce it all the way down, so that they reprocess it in a less distressing way in a safe environment. So the idea is that memories get stuck in the brain with the original sounds, sights, sensations occurred at the original moment of creation. And so EMDR aims to free these memories for better mental health. Basically, that's the point. Would
Beautiful.
You say something similar?
You know, um, you know, EMDR for me, clinically speaking, right, is a very powerful holistic therapy model, right, that really, really gives a beautiful, beautiful complement to the mind-body connection. Okay. And so, and with that, what we're doing is a memory-based therapy, right? And from this therapy, what it suggests or proposes is that lots of the stuff, and I'm borrowing a term from Miss Rebecca Case. I love how she says, we all have stuff that creates yuck, right? We all have had life experiences that were tough, okay? And a lot of the times, if we think about just our digestive system, right? And how when we go through a challenge or whatever, if we eat too much, okay, and how that food can sometimes get stuck, okay, and it has a hard time not processing or whatever the case may be. And our mind and our bodies go through that same thing, especially when it comes to the things that we're trying to deal with as mental health professionals, right? And so being able to use a therapy like EMDR to help heal, cleanse, purge, whatever we want to call it, those memories from those past painful things that we've been through, to kind of do like give Drano, liquid Drano for the braino, right? To clean out whatever stuff, creating the low self-esteem, the anxiety, and lots of the things, right? So EMDR is just a beautiful therapy that in my book, what we're doing is taking the natural, organic way your brain and body heals, and we are intentionally using that to help your body with the stuff that it couldn't process or digest because it was too much, right? It was too much. It was too much for you to digest or swallow at the time, or your brain and body, right?
And we're facilitating that, aren't we? We're facilitators. That's what I tell the patients, is that your own brain's doing the healing. We're facilitators of the process. When you have a memory encoded at an early point in time, and then you have subsequent experiences that reinforce that belief, it creates a memory network. And so if we can go back to the point of origin and resolve that, sometimes those points forward will resolve with symptom reduction. And I don't know if you experienced this, but when I went to basic training, we have to receive the treatment as EMDR clinicians. And if you don't know that and you're thinking about doing EMDR, be prepared, take a couple days off afterwards. But it's like when I went to bed that night, it was like my brain was filing all of these files in storage. I was up and my brain was just going and I couldn't explain it. And then I woke up the next day and the material that I was working on was gone. And I'm not
Isn't
saying
it amazing?
outcome for everyone, but that was my experience.
See, and and what was amazing, and I'm so glad that you did that, right? Because we want our fellow clinicians who are curious about EMDR to know, right, that yes, I went through the EMDR Institute and we had to do, nobody told, well, no. The supervisor at the practice that was encouraging me to do the training, she did tell me. And she said that was why she said, take those days off. Okay.
Okay.
Now, but I didn't know. Now, here's the little curve for me, right? Because much like you're sharing, when you do CBT, depending on the model and where you learn CBT, that's the thing I've noticed. Because, see, I got introduced to CBT just out of the books, out of my, what is it, the ethics book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just little books that I had, you learn.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't realize that, for example, in as a talk therapist or going through as a substance abuse counselor coming into this profession, I had always heard narratives like, it's not about the past doesn't matter. Okay, so
Right.
you don't
Right.
have to address the past or don't bring up the past because there's nothing they can do about it. And so I was a new coming therapist holding that narrative and that philosophy that the
Yeah.
past is over and it wasn't important. And then when I got into EMDR, and even when I was noticing in my sessions, a lot of the content my clients
Right.
were talking about was the past. I loved, and I know I'm going to say for me, and then I'm going to say on behalf, right, of some of the people in the BIPOC community. It was so liberating,
Yes.
so validating to hear the past was present until we heal it.
Can you explain for the listeners about the purpose and meaning of the BIPOC component of this? What it means and what it means for you?
Yeah. So I know for me, so when we hear the term, right, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous People of Color, right, it's the brown folks, or it's the people, as I understand it, who were not necessarily their origin wasn't the United States, right? So the Africans, or the Hispanic or the Mexicans, y'all, because y'all don't come for me with the multicultural. We getting it together, right? But
Yeah.
being able to make sure I respectfully identify, right? This could be the people who are the Asians in that culture, the Indians and things of that nature, but just the Black indigenous people of color, right? And for me and y'all, because it lights my soul,
Yeah.
not only because I am a clinician, but before I'm a clinician, I am a Black woman. I
Yeah.
am a Black mom. I am a Black wife. I am a Black daughter, right? I am a Black human being in this world right now. And it was a joy because already in some of those facilities,
Yes.
the prison facility, I saw a lot of us. I saw a lot of my people.
Right.
Yeah, I saw a lot of other people too, but we were crowded in there. Then we're crowded in the homeless shelters. It's filled with people
Yes.
of color. But in private practice, it's like,
Oh.
this is for you too.
Uh,
You don't have to be broken down. We don't have to wait until we are just at critical mass and we're devastated to reach up and reach out for help. So being able, and I am getting teary-eyed because my passion is to be able to not be one of the people, if I'm really honest,
yeah.
because one of the things that lights my anger is when I see professional helpers and the energy or their intention in the message really isn't about healing. It's about something else.
And I want to talk to you just a little bit about that. I'm a white person with 3 white children and 2 white males. So I want to keep them
Yeah.
conscious of their privilege, the invisible knapsack idea that there's all
Yeah.
these invisible strings, as I'm still raising my white men to be able to give them that information. So whatever they decide, they can make their choice, but at least it'll be trauma informed and culturally informed as we talk about
Informed.
history, right?
Yeah. And this is the beautiful thing
Mhm.
that EMDR, like I had a client ask me, and it broke my heart because she said, I've been in and out of therapy for years, and this is a woman of color.
Yeah.
And I've had two.
Yeah.
One was an Asian woman,
Mhm.
okay, and another an African American woman, who both two they don't know each other, and said, "I've been going to therapy for years. Well, I've never heard of EMDR."
And let's talk about that too. I mean, out here in Idaho, where I'm at, you're in Texas, I'm in Idaho, so we're in some very cowboy states, and some very different beliefs about EMDR. What if this is so effective? I can't tell you how many times I've said, this is so effective, why haven't I heard of it? I can't tell you that. There's a lot of other forms of therapy. I can tell you my experience. My mission is to create space for more trauma-informed therapists in Idaho. And no, I don't want to just say in Idaho, but
Of
across
course.
the world, so that people
Yeah.
can have that brand and that opportunity for people to heal in a big way, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and it's so, and I'm so grateful that we're able to have these conversations because it's just the world we live in, you know, and we don't have to show up the way some of us have.
I did want
And
to speak to
yeah,
you 1 second about that idea of the energy that you're bringing, though, because if you are an EMDR trained person, and we'll get back to the 8 phase protocol just for a second, but I want to hit on this, and I think you've experienced it too, is therapists' beliefs sometimes aren't aligned. They're not the leader I need to get me to where I need to be as a consultant or trainer. Let's just put it that
yeah,
way. And so the energy, I have to be able to trust my person that's leading me. If you don't trust your consultant and you're trying to be certified, you have to be vulnerable enough to ask the questions, to get the things that you need. And I've had to switch 2 or 3 consultants until I found people that worked for me. So giving yourself that permission to say, hey, this relationship isn't vibing, it's okay. And it's okay. Give yourself permission to say, you can go somewhere else to get what you need for the learning that you need. Because a lot of it can feel fragmented and like there's not a community, but there is. And
yeah,
so I want you to trust yourself there too.
yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think that that is a great way to begin to move into the close of this segment, is to talk about that and to really, um, this is me really being genuine
Yeah.
with myself, with you, and with our community. This is why places like Rewire 360 is so important, because what you're offering is to not only help with, because EMDR and coming into it, and I think that this was a great conversation laying a groundwork on
Mhm.
what it can look like, what it can feel like, what, the whole journey, and knowing it's going to be different for everyone. But at the end of the day, EMDR is a huge learning curve. It is almost like going back to college for another specialty degree.
That's why I called it EMDR University, because it
See?
is,
And
you
it
know.
is. And unfortunately, what I have witnessed, and I can't say, right, I don't have the right to say what what I have witnessed is that because of that learning curve, some people who do go to the training, they fall off and they don't start using it, and then the information is, they just leave because it's too much.
Right.
Okay, and sometimes, and we're all wired differently, but EMDR is one of those models that you do need time to go over in repetitiously, and you got to give yourself a lot of grace. And that's where a community, a university like Rewire 360 comes in, because you can. And then the leader, and this is not ego stroking, these are just facts, because this is what I've experienced, this is how you've helped and served me. You are very, very, very welcoming and inclusive, and you make, and the beautiful thing is how you rock and lead. I don't even know if you know, but you make sure you deliver that, right? So y'all, if y'all don't know, Kathy is so laid back, but boy, when she is going to be able to make sure that space we're in is protected and safe,
Yeah.
and everyone is,
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to get the leader in her, and it's beautiful, and she does it with so much grace and
Oh,
poise.
thank you.
And I'm serious, and I've watched you do it. So it's like, okay, and then me coming into that community, and then seeing women who look like me in the
Yes.
community at Rewired
Yes.
360, seeing
Yes.
my other beautiful, I like to call them therapy sister friends,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And that when we get in that sacred space and we get in that circle, you allow us to just be who we are,
In
ask
circle.
questions,
We're
and
in
get what we
circle.
need.
We're in community.
And yeah, because can I just say, in my opinion,
Yeah.
if you get on the track and you're going to go down the EMDR track, get you a community.
Yeah, get you a community, get you someone that gets you, not just another, I'm going to get certified, let me give you your hours. Get somebody that you can connect with, that you can trust, that you can, resource and connect. I mean, this is one of the times where we get to pick our instructor.
Right. And I think, and I love that. And I can't apologize that I love pointing that out every time it comes up in our podcast that we get to choose. Because I think so many of us, both the new and seasoned therapists, many of us are out here and we are in
Yeah.
the autopilot zone, and we have just our little therapy compass. We forgot. Just like our clients get to choose their therapist, imagine we have a choice.
And when you get to the point to where you can become an EMDR consultant, you're ready to maybe do a business or something like that. My job is to help you create that so that you get those tools so that you don't have to feel like, I remember feeling like, that person has a private practice. That's so cool. Well, I want to give you the toolkit and hand it to you. It's still in development, but still hand it to you to say, listen, try these things. These are tested strategies. Tamira's given me input. This is what my community's saying. And so a lot of the branding and culture that I promote, I embody, is a result of the community impressing upon me, right? And so that
Yes.
give back and forth type of idea. I want to hit really quick, just going over these 8 phases. It's really important to
Yeah.
understand. So when they come into the EMDR session, you have a history taking and you plan your treatment. We review some of the memories that they want to work on. And so you get a headline, and then phase 2 is where you prepare them, where you say, this is bilateral stimulation. Here's your stop signal. These are some things you might do to prepare for EMDR. And then the assessment phase is using the treatment, the targeted image from the event, the cognitions, negative and positive emotions, and then a distress scale. So what Tamira was saying about the ratings, it really gives you some minutia around what the cognitions are and what the distress is. We desensitize it, which is the bilateral stimulation back and forth. That's phase 4. We continue that till the distress is resolved. And then we install a positive cognition. Basically, the stress reduction is paired with the positive belief. Then we scan their body, phase 6, make sure the distress is gone. We close it. If more material comes up at a later time, we reevaluate it. That's phase 8. If somebody comes in and says, hey, this is what's going on, we reevaluate, we can go back. And so it's a forgiving therapy, but I really enjoy the semi-permeable parameters, right? Semi-permeable means you can go through and come back, but there's still some structure within it. And finding your gift as a therapist within it, too, is going to be important.
It's so powerful. It's so, I'm sitting up here, I'm listening to you, and because I do EMDR every day, all day, and I will say this, and this is an encouragement. It's a little challenge, but it's also an encouragement for those who are curious, or maybe even for the therapists who maybe you did EMDR training over the weekend, and you're like, oh my God, I don't think. Okay, I'm going to share with you that in the core of who I am, I'm very gutsy. I'm a risk taker. And so I came out of the training and I started using. I didn't wait. Okay. Yeah. And I was so willing to do it uncomfortably, but just like how you said, taking those tools. But when you were sharing that, all I could see was the process we do. Yeah. And the amazing results. Yeah. Those 8 phases. Yeah. And when we come back, we got to fill in the gap, fill in the beats, because it's so different than talk therapy.
So we'll talk more about, sounds like we're going through the phases again at the next session.
Well, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's kind of what we'll talk about at some point, is talking about those details, getting a little bit into the more juicy stuff around that. But I just want to say, Tamira has just been amazing at taking these ideas, marinating on them, taking the action. And if you're considering making the change, get a hold of one of us. Talk to us.
Mm.
We're people. We're here for our people, you know.
Yes.
I don't want, somebody said using the word tribe is cultural misappropriation. So I want to be culturally sensitive, but I like to call people my tribe, because they are my people, they're my community, they're my peeps, you know. And
Yeah.
so I want to create that for you, create that connection to people that really have a pure, genuine intent and love for learning.
Yes, I love it. And again, if you're out there, we want to encourage you, right? Hopefully, we've said something that can aid, support, shed a little light for you in some form or another. If you have heard something that you know you can apply to your life and you know that you feel you can do now, we encourage you to do that. Okay. Otherwise, I thank you all for joining us and tuning in. I'm going to pass this hot mic over so that Kathy can take us out. Okay. And so, Kathy, go on and take us out of here.
Yep, that's Tamira with Arise Counseling and Psychotherapy. She's awesome. You can find her all over Facebook because she's amazing. I'm Kathy with Rewired 360. I have the Rewired University. You can find me on Facebook. I have a group, and then I have a free peer huddle and a business brainstorm just as a service to the community to ask those questions. And a free resource library at Rewired 360. So join us, follow us, like us. We really do like to hear the feedback. And we're so thrilled to be up and running on this podcast. It's a labor of love, and we're so thrilled. So thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Have a wonderful week.
Take care.